Hello there, and welcome to Gooner U, where there are no degrees because the learning never stops. I'm Dove, a TA here at Gooner U, and my friend Keith is our stalwart distinguished professor of Arsenal and football studies. Enter our classroom as we discuss the week's news involving Arsenal, Premier League, Champions League, and international football, all from the perspective of a couple of Americans. This week featured a New Year's Day match at Brentford's G-Tech Community Stadium, as well as an away match yesterday as we record on the beach at Brighton's Amex Stadium. Hello, Keith. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year! I'm back in Houston, so it's now back on Central Time, which is actually really enjoyable for watching television. I know you're a former Central Time person yourself, So you understand.
I do. Yeah, it used to be like it would only be on Disney World vacations that we got to taste the Eastern time zone lifestyle, but I've grown accustomed to it.
I mean, I like it and everything, but yeah, just then you for television watching Central is pretty great, I have to say.
Yeah, as someone who doesn't really watch live TV almost ever, it doesn't affect me too much, but I get what you're saying.
Well, for sports in particular, and what I find is interesting, because of course I watch a lot of the NFL, and in the US, the NFL typically on Sunday they kick off at 1:00 Eastern time, but here in Central Time it's noon, which is great. And then you go to the East Coast, as I was for the holidays, and you go to watch the game, and it's like, it starts at 1? Oh, my gosh. So much time.
For domestic sports, I agree. Like, having it like maybe an hour earlier could be advantageous sometimes. For Premier League and European purposes, I'm happier being an hour later.
Yeah, that's a different kettle of fish, as they say. I guess we should talk about. Speaking of which, we have a couple games to talk about this week.
Yeah,
but I'll try to avoid the doom and gloom too much, which I don't think is really warranted this week. Doom and gloom, that is, not avoiding it. But I understand you had to take your mind off of the more dreary Brighton outcome.
Yeah,
afterwards. So
I watched the full match replay. This was later on the same day as the match yesterday. And yeah, by the time I finished watching it, it was like 12:30, 1 a.m. and I didn't want to go to bed on that note. So I pulled up Back to School, which started streaming a couple weeks ago on Amazon, and I'd never seen it before, and I recommend it. I think the first Rodney Dangerfield, aside from Caddyshack, I haven't seen that a couple times. The only other Rodney Dangerfield movie I'd seen was when we watched Ladybugs, and I think Back to School is a far better Dangerfield movie than that was, and I liked that.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. Back to School is one of the jewels in the Rodney Dangerfield crown. Along with, I mean, it's hard. I don't think there's any topping Caddyshack, although it's not a Rodney Dangerfield movie as much as it is a movie in which Rodney Dangerfield appears. Right,
exactly. So by way of follow-up, I asked about Waka Waka last week, and it was one of those things where I didn't necessarily fully comprehend what I was asking about, and it turned out there's a very comprehensible, relatable reason that I didn't know this song that so many other people do, which is it was the anthem of the 2010 World Cup.
It was. I
wasn't watching football back then. Like, it was something that, like, having absolutely no touch point, like, I wouldn't have heard it anywhere. It makes sense that I wasn't aware of it until now.
It was. I do recall that. Now, it being a Shakira song, it had a little bit more cultural spread than just through the World Cup. I recall hearing it in other circumstances, but I didn't know what it was. I'm trying to think. Yeah, the World Cup always has for the longest time had an official song, most of which you've never heard of. I am trying to remember. Oh, it was what is it? Oh yes, Ricky Martin had the Cup of Life for the '98 World Cup, which was,
that one I knew. That was playing on the radio nonstop. Yes,
right. But other than that, yeah, there was not. I'd be honest, I cannot for the life of me tell you any other World Cup song, but they all have one.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I think Shakira's was probably partly because it was Shakira and just kind of it works its way into the mainstream a little bit more that way.
It's catchy. Yes. It's catchy. I put a link last episode, and I'll do the same again this episode. A link to the music video on YouTube for anyone who wants to watch it out of curiosity.
What you need to find is an hour-long repeating version, so we can just sing 60 minutes down the drain. But anyway.
There's an idea. Well, anyways, I don't think there's really much by way of other news or anything to cover this week. So let's head over to the first of our away matches at Brentford.
Right. So Brentford 1, Arsenal 3 from the G-Tech Community Stadium, as it's now known, or the Brentford Community Stadium as was opened. Now, let's just cards on the table here. I did not see this game, it being New Year's Day. I had other things I was doing. Mm-hmm. But I will pitch it to you a little bit. I mean, I've read some recaps. I've heard some things. I have a basic understanding of how the game played out. I guess I'd say as you are developing your skills as an observer of the sport, what stood out to you about this game other than the fact that we won and winning is good?
As noted recently, yes, winning is good. And fun, of course. So first of all, I would say I felt like 1-3 felt representative of it. I feel like it was a game where we did dominate as usual, and then our chances converted. They gave us a bunch, and we made good use of them. I think to me one of the standouts of the match was Nwaneri playing the bulk of it. He had a good match. He came out there like really scrappy, like to me looking like he wanted to prove himself, and he largely did. He had involvements in 2 out of the 3 goals that we ended up scoring, and did a really great job for us. And it was his first ever Premier League start. I'm happy to see that, especially given the outlook for Saka at this point. So.
Yeah, they did make a comment. I heard post-game Arteta made some comment that actually I think it was away to Brentford was where he made his debut.
Right.
As a 15-year-old. So it's a kind of an odd suggestion. There's a certain comfort or familiarity to playing in that stadium because it's the only one he's played in that Premier League. It's not, which isn't quite accurate, but to get a start there, which is kind of one of those weird things that I guess on some level that's true. And it was nice to see, looking at the lineup and seeing him in. Did he go 90? Did he actually play the whole game?
I think no. He came off in the 78th minute.
Okay.
But most of it. He played most of the match. In contrast to Brighton, where he only played the first half.
Right. We'll talk about that with Brighton. And he was involved in 2 of the goals. I mean, I see obviously early on Brentford got the first goal.
Yep. It threw us for a loop a little bit, but not for like an entire rest of the first half funk like we've seen once or twice this season. We didn't really appear phased. It took a little bit for us to actually convert a chance, but we didn't look demoralized by it like has happened once or twice this season, So yeah, no, it was and then I mean the build up to that first goal. So we've talked recently about some expletive or snap moments, right, that have happened in the past few matches. Raya had a major one where he held his hands up to block a ball, and people say it went through his hands. I mean, that's not how I would characterize it. It ricocheted off his fingertips, went up and over his hands, but still toward the goal line, right? And he scrambled back faster than I've ever seen a keeper move in my life before and leapt backwards to claw the ball off of the goal line. And it was within an inch of crossing over. I mean, what they showed is the edge of the ball was overlapping the line entirely except for the last inch. I think the entire ball would have needed to go over the goal line for it to count, though. So it was maybe 3-4 inches from defeat in that battle. But yeah.
Yeah, so it does have to cross. I mean, he's had a few of those instances this season, the old double save. But this one was a little bit more of his own doing this time.
Exactly. Usually a double save, it's like two separate attempts. This is like a double save on a single attempt.
That was quite the highlight. I did see, wow. You got a little look at the Hawkeye technology. I saw they ran that with the replay, and you can see the line. And what I love about it, and we can talk about this in another context, is just how quick and easy it is.
Mm-hmm. And unambiguous.
And there's an argument to be made. Is it accurate? How accurate is it really? Like we talk about drawing the lines for offsides, but I think we kind of accepted that this computer is just going to do it for us, and it's just okay. It drew the lines. It measured the ball. Okay, there it is. No goal. Play on. So yeah, that's kind of fun. But yeah, that one's man for Raya. That's one. Obviously, it's good that he has the presence of mind there to scramble back to get his hand on the ball the second time. But boy, he wants that first. You got to think he wants that first one back.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, but it's kind of funny though the way this ended up working out. I feel like made that attempt even more demoralizing for them than it might have otherwise been. Right, where they're up 1-0 at that point, they take a shot on target. Is so close to going in, and I feel like they may have been phased just enough to allow us within the next minute to actually get our first goal, and instead of it being 2-0, it's 1-1, and we're able to recover from that.
Yeah, I mean, it is really interesting. It's so much about that notion of the momentum, or they'll sometimes call it the sliding doors moment. Like, what is this the moment where things could have been different? Is this the moment things could have been changed? And 2-0 down. I mean, I'm going to go back to their goal really quickly. To his credit, Mbuemo makes a nice run and I think a tidy finish. But I do think we have to look at it from the Arsenal perspective and maybe assign some blame. Who might you? I don't want to say throw under the bus, but who was at fault there? Who do you think kind of should get blamed for the goal there?
Yeah, so I'll rule out Raya. I think by the time the ball made it to him, I don't think there was really anything more he could have done. Honestly, like looking at it in the highlights, I think you could trace it back even before the defenders. I think the defenders did okay trying to get back. I mean, it's really the giveaway in the first place. Like, I think it was Odegaard, I think, made the pass that got turned over that Mbuemo ran with and ended up putting in. Or whoever, I think actually it was passed to him. But it was that giveaway, I think, is really probably who you would have to blame for it. Which overall wasn't representative of this match in the same way we'll talk about with Brighton, which was just completely characterized by giveaways all match long, and it was super frustrating. This was just like a one-off thing that, like we've talked about before, very often this season in particular, we slip up one time and get punished for it. This time, but we came back.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what that counterattacking does. The idea is it unbalances your defense, and so as the attacking player is coming in, your defenders are scrambling to get back. I mean, I think, I saw the highlight. I do think you're right, because I've been critical of Raya on some of these goals where I think to myself, I could have done better. I looked at the highlight and thought, nah, that's not on him. I do think is a little. Calafiori is the name I've seen getting some of the blame in some of the post-match discourse. I don't think that's entirely wrong, but I think you're right. I think they're just too unbalanced in terms of coming back and dealing with the counterattack, and I think that's really where all of the space they get comes from. But yeah, it's unfortunate, and it's just one of those things. One thing we haven't really done is respond particularly well when going down this season, mostly because we don't go down very much at all. But one thing we've done well, or we haven't really had the opportunity to do is come back. We've seen that a couple times with Liverpool recently, right? They'll concede the goal and are able to bounce back and earn a point, or even win the game. And we finally got to do that, which is nice to see. And it sounds like that's a little bit more reflective of how the game was being played.
Well, yeah, and I was, as you were talking, I was just rewatching that segment of the play, and yeah, I think the main criticism I've heard of Calafiori in that moment was his positioning of his legs was not how you necessarily should. He left the gap open for him to go through instead of bending his knees a little more, closing down that space between his legs when he extended to try and block it. But yeah, ultimately it ended up being moot, thankfully.
Right. Nice to see Gabriel Jesus on the scoreboard again. I mean, that's the kind of goal you love from him. He gets the header in off the rebound. When he's playing well, to me, he's really buzzing around the box and just kind of making a nuisance of himself there. Do you think the goal is characteristic of his performance in this game?
I didn't notice him as much in this game as I noticed him off the ball in the Brighton match. So I can't really comment on that. But what I can say definitely is Partey had a strong match against Brentford in a way that he annoyed me in the Brighton match. But against Brentford, he had a good showing. And this was probably his best moment, where it was a really strong shot from him. That was a strong enough on-target shot that the keeper can only push it away instead of catching it. And that's what Jesus was able to head in. So,
okay. I mean, just thinking of it, sounds like we sort of kept that going in the second half and really just kind of took control of the game. Obviously, Mikel Merino in the box, Martinelli again in the box. The impression I've gotten is once it hit 3-1, Arsenal kind of put the clamps on the game, and that was, I guess I'd say, it's kind of the end of anything interesting happening. Is that consistent with your experience in this one?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, as far as interesting, we had another instance of an Arsenal player's chest being exposed due to his shirt being torn wide open. That happened to Jesus this time. I remember sometime earlier in the season that happened to Trossard. We joked around about it. It was kind of more like central chest on Jesus being exposed, not his pec as much. Yeah. But that was interesting because you see him walking away from this conflagration with his shirt torn wide open, and the foul was given against him by the ref, which you don't love to see. But
yeah. But
I noticed Nwaneri was taking corner kicks actually on the left side because Declan Rice wasn't in, and I believe in the Brighton match, Martinelli was back to taking kicks on the left side when Nwaneri wasn't. But that's really awesome that they have him making set piece plays too, that they can count on his delivery. So. Yeah,
it does speak to a lot of the trust they have Arteta has in him and what he's capable of doing. Because those are kind of, set piece delivery is so deceptively simple. I mean, think about it, the ball just sits there and your job is just to swing it into the box. And these are all professionals who can do things with the ball that, obviously so many people can't. Mm-hmm. But then you put them in the moment in the game and it's hard. I mean, think about how many times we've seen. For years, Arsenal struggled with that kind of play. But think about how many times we've seen, even the poor deliveries, and just you get frustrated by it. But even then, when it comes from Odegaard or Saka or Rice, these experienced players who we know can deliver a good ball. So very exciting to see that one year he does that.
Yeah, exactly. No, it was impressive. He definitely stood out in this match. So one question I had before we move on, and actually it applies to Brighton also. Where was Kai Havertz? I didn't hear about him getting injured.
No, so apparently there's a bug going around, and it must be going around North London because I heard some similar comments around Spurs this week as well. There's a bug going around. Apparently Havertz has it pretty bad because he was out for this game, and I believe wasn't even on the bench for Brighton either.
Right.
My understanding from the commentary was that several other players on the side were also feeling it, but not as badly as Havertz was. So it's unfortunate, but I guess I'd say this is a game. It's a game where it kind of worked out for us, and I think it will sort of bring in the comparison to the Brighton game. I think we had more than enough coming out of the midfield, which is what made us more dangerous, more capable. We didn't necessarily need him up top in terms of the scoring thing. Just one more I do want to ask about quickly. Obviously, one of the stories coming out of this game and leading us into the next one was Jurrien Timber picked up a yellow, and as a result, picked up his suspension for the Brighton game, was out. I mean, I did not see a highlight of the yellow card. What did you think of it as a foul or as a yellow? What happened there?
I didn't make a note about it at the time, which means it was probably just like, yeah, that it was probably a deserved yellow. I mean, yeah.
Okay.
It didn't stand out to me either way. It does stink that I wasn't even thinking of it as I watched the Brighton match yesterday, but yeah, that would have made a big difference having him there. But yeah, alas.
Yeah, and I guess the thing that really makes that particularly frustrating in terms of the suspension is because we were at the midway point of the season, we were at that moment where the accumulation total kicks up for a suspension. Like if he avoided it in this one, he was clear for another couple of, for another few games at least. And so that's, it's especially frustrating. I hadn't even looked, which we picked up a fair number of yellows this year. I hadn't even looked though. If anybody else was him or anyone was near a suspension, obviously he was one away, clearly.
Yeah, I actually had read an article that was talking about that. I'm pulling it up now. Let's see, where was this? This is from the Standard. So this was from December 19th. They were talking about it. And I guess Jesus had 4 bookings. Sacco, Rice, Timber, and Jorginho were all on 3. Now, this is as of December 19th, and they played a couple matches between then and the Brentford one. So, yeah, we had a few players that were probably close. But yeah, he got the unlucky call on that one. So, yeah.
So any closing thoughts on the Brentford win, other than it's the start you want to the new year?
No, it definitely is. I think one interesting record that we broke with this one is Brentford had been undefeated at home this season until we beat them. So we were the first ones to do that this season, which is pretty cool.
I did see that. That is a nice little feather in our cap.
And it's particularly meaningful when it is the match that ends the first half of the season, because that means every other team has played them, right? Like, and so roughly half or so of the other teams. It's not like it's the first few matches and who cares? Like a good number of teams have played them at home. So yeah.
Fantastic. So
Brighton, this was the beginning of the second half of our season. It was yesterday, Saturday, January 4th of 2025, and a 1-1 draw.
Yeah, a 1-1 draw and a result that I think is, in the end, is probably fair to the way the game was played. I think that, so right away we were in a problem, as we talked about, with Timber being suspended. The most likely outcome, which I don't love, but happened anyway, as it usually does, is Thomas Partey plays right back. That means we're looking at that midfield of Jorginho, Marino, and Rice, which I like all those players for various reasons. But that is a very industrious midfield. That's not an attacking. I mean, like, thinking about the comparison between what we see in this game and what you saw in Brentford, being able to generate chances. That's not what this version of the midfield does. I mean, I was talking with some people, like, when we watched that kickoff. This is a game we're going to win 1-0. Like, this is going to be a rough one. And then you look at the bench with Havertz still being sick. Odegaard was on the bench, which I think says a lot more about the week that's coming rather than necessarily this match in particular. Good to see Calafiori
wanting to rest him preemptively. Okay.
Well, preemptively, but I think it also speaks a little bit to, especially at this stage of the season, we're juggling the different competitions.
Right.
We've got 9 games in January, which is bonkers.
Yeah.
And in all 4 competitions.
Yep.
Because as we'll talk about this weekend, we pick up with the FA Cup. But I think that to me, resting Odegaard, at least in the first half there, says to me, Arteta's looking at the Carabao Cup, and I agree with this take. That's a trophy. Like, the Carabao Cup is a nice youth cup for the first couple rounds, but this is the semifinals. Like, you are 120 minutes or 180 minutes away from Wembley. You got to seize that opportunity. And in terms of prioritizing, and away to Brighton, again, it's one of those that, absent anything else, there's nothing wrong with a draw at Brighton. Like they are a good team, and that is a tough place to go. And so for him to say, for him, for us to look at Brighton as to be disappointed about dropping points there, that's not so much that we dropped points; it's that we got a point in a difficult setting. But yeah, this was always going to be a functional game, and I'm more the way it played out is where the frustration comes from, rather than necessarily the result itself.
Well, so to me, there were two proximate causes to the way that it turned out. I mean, the first thing was, as I alluded to when we were talking about Brentford, it was incredibly frustrating the amount of turnovers that we were giving up. It was just over and over and over again, just passes not finding their targets repeatedly and frustratingly all throughout the first and second halves. Do you know what was going on there with that? I mean, was it just because of the rotation, or was it was like pouring rain the whole time? That could have been a factor.
I think it's all of the above. I think you add in rotation, and we've talked about this, how, when we're not, we don't really have a preferred 11 this season. I honestly don't know what our preferred 11 is. Like, what if Arteta had every single player available, who would his starters be? And obviously, it may depend a little bit on the opponent, but I don't know who that is. But yeah, we've seen when there's heavy lineup rotation, sometimes there's an adjustment period. The weather was awful. The pitch was. I mean, I'd say the pitch was in good shape for dealing with the fact that it was raining, a kind of wintry mix.
Right.
I know you are familiar with what that. It's one of those things when you say it, if you know what it is, you go, "Oh no, that's the worst."
Yeah.
I think we talked about the whatever bug is going around. I think you saw that. I think also some of it's just kind of a bit of exhaustion. Brighton played on the 30th. They had 2 extra days off. We played on the 1st, and then played on was that the first was a Wednesday, right?
Wednesday, yep.
Yeah,
Wednesday,
and then we played on
Saturday. Yeah.
Wednesday, Saturday. That's a tight turnaround with Brighton having the extra day or two. And this isn't a schedule complaint. It's so unfair. No, I mean, this just happens sometimes, and it's annoying. But I think it was all of the above on there. We, especially in the second half, we look exhausted. Like you're crossing your fingers and you're trying to will them forward to get the goal. But man, it was hard to see us scoring a second goal, late on, just because we just looked so sluggish. I mean, Rice looked completely knackered.
That's
we
a
did
good
not. We looked. But yeah, I mean, I think it was a lot of that. But yeah, it was a sloppy game from us overall, which is impressive because outside of the penalty, Brighton had a few chances they maybe should have done better with. And, we talked about the limitations to XG as a statistic, but a pretty good result for this game. That was, I think what Arteta was trying to do was institute control, given the lineup we were running out, institute some control. And if you steal a 1-0, take the money and run. And we couldn't quite get away with it today.
Yeah.
But how about the kid? How about Ethan Nwaneri with the one?
Yeah, no, I mean, it was the most surprising thing was that he didn't stay in the second half. I mean, did you hear anything else about that after the match was over?
Yeah, so he got hurt.
Oh, it was okay.
Yeah, So this was Arteta post game. We have lost him as well. It is a muscular thing. We had to take him off, and described it as, quote, really bad news. So yeah, it's been one of those seasons.
Man.
But we'll talk about that in a moment. I just want to talk about this goal. It's not a great strike, let's be honest. I don't think he actually gets the ball quite as well as he wants. But what I love is watching the confidence to cut in like that. We've talked about that sort of goal scorer's mentality. And we've seen it with Saka. We talked about it with Jesus, right? To cut in with the ball and say, no, I'm shooting. because I think I can score. And to go in and do that, I mean, we were watching come in. I mean, we're just waiting for him to make the cross and looking for Jesus or somebody else or Trossard there on the far side making the run. And he just went in and said, no, I got this. And he got it. He did. He really did. And that was, that's exciting to see that he has that kind of, mentality, that kind of confidence. And in baseball, they say it's a line drive on the box score.
Right.
You tell the story years from now about your first Premier League goal. Yeah, it was a screamer into the top corner. It kind of rolled under the keeper, who probably wants to do better with it. But whatever, it's a goal. They all count the same. That was really exciting.
It was a well aimed shot. It was a precisely taken shot. I think it probably went where he wanted it to. Yeah. And he picked the right spot to aim for. So yeah, I think overall I wouldn't take anything away from that.
Yeah, I mean I'm being a little bit nitpicky there. I did think he was a little, and it's interesting. So otherwise though, we've seen him have better performances. I think he was very loose with the ball in his dribbles. He had a few times where he didn't quite get himself in good positions in terms of passing the ball or receiving passes. He has the yellow card, which I
was going to ask you about that.
So let me just say, we do take a long time sometimes. Like they've timed this. We do take a long time on some things like throw-ins and set pieces at corners like that.
It didn't look to me like it took any longer than our corners usually do. And maybe we do take longer than other clubs statistically, but it looked like a normal one to me.
And some other people who had watched it said there was something where like Gabriel was coming out to say something and the referee waved Gabriel off, which is like, I don't know why you can do that. And then almost immediately after yellow card gives the yellow to Wanyeri.
It's like he had in his mind that we were throwing all these delaying tactics out there and he was going to put a stop to it no matter what.
Yeah. And, I have larger thoughts about the refereeing, but we're not going to get into that. We told that's the season's resolution about refereeing. But I thought that was a dodgy yellow, but and honestly, when we came back for the second half and you saw they made the substitution right away, that's kind of what a lot of us figured, was that they were a little nervous about Wanyeri on the yellow.
Right.
And the way Arteta's talked about him, too, the comments he's made about Wanyeri and sort of waiting to put him in makes it sound like there's I don't want to say a problem, but the concern is physical. That there's something about, and we look at him and think, yeah, he's built like a brick. But there's something about, probably related to his age. Of course, he's 17, 18. He's still physically developing. The physicality is difficult to deal with. There's a sense that, maybe he's not, there may be some ailment they're managing. But add all that, it was a bit surprising because usually don't see halftime subs like that, but it wasn't. Right. We saw it and we kind of rationalized it, and then afterwards you hear about the injury and then you're just like, yeah. So that was frustrating. It's frustrating, especially to hear afterwards. But I mean, like we talked about, we didn't have a lot of attacking options on the bench, and so for Martinelli came in, and Martinelli, and we just. I know people are going to talk about the need for a forward and a striker. I think the real problem is it's not that we're taking a lot of injuries. It's that we're taking a lot of injuries in the same positions. It's all the outside players. I mean, right? I mean, that's Saka is out. Wanyeri is his replacement. He's out. Jesus is being played centrally, even though he could play out wide. Martinelli is coming off the bench to rotate. We talk about the left back rotating door that we've had going on out now in that position as well. So yeah, it's not a case of, I guess I would say, because I think the transfer window's coming up, I would be surprised if we actually make much in the way of additions. I don't have any inside knowledge. I'm not going to pretend that a word on the street is, I have no idea. I hear the same rumor mills that everyone else does. I guess just my thinking, I don't see. I'm not going to be shocked and disappointed if we don't make an addition. I feel like getting players back from injury, to pull out an old Wengerism, it's like a new signing, which I think is going to have to be with it. And some of it's just you're buying a player as an injury replacement, but that you're basically saying within a month or 2 months, like for the end run of the season, that player is going to sit, which is kind of an odd way to bring a guy in. And then, and this was a point that was brought up on the Arscast. Like, we're kind of at the point where if you're looking for a player that makes Arsenal better, we're so good that player probably costs £40 million. And
Right.
I don't know that we want to spend £40 million in January. Like, I don't think that's where, like, I don't think that makes sense for us. And I don't really, and again, this is without knowing who's potentially available and whatnot. So I guess, I think it's not so much a case of we need a number 9, we need a goal scorer, but with Saka out and Havertz out, Nwaneri out, and Martinelli is trying to rotate, and Trossard. Admittedly, Trossard I don't think he was particularly good today, yesterday. I didn't think. We have Partey who can do a lot for us in terms of progressing the ball, playing right back. I feel like it's a case where I don't know that the answer comes from the outside. I mean, Raheem Sterling is another player out injured currently. Ben White, there's the talk is he might come back in January. Just think about how much we're missing in those outside positions in those particular spaces. And yeah, then you add in the rotation and the tiredness and all of that. And that's, I mean, again, we talked about Liverpool dropping points today against United. We're at the time of year where this sort of thing happens. This is the time of the year where it's a grind and you have to grind your way through it. And so, but unfortunately, the thing about only being up 1-0 is that all it takes is a mistake to blow it. We saw that with Mbeumo and Brentford. And then we saw it here with William Saliba, Joao Pedro. And I have to say, I'm glad I didn't say it out loud. In the lead up to that play, I was saying to myself, man, William Saliba is having a really good game today. And then.
So at first I was just like, oh, dang it. And kind of more like, down on Saliba for it. But as I saw it replayed from multiple angles and at various speeds, it really looks to me like Joao Pedro kind of heads into Saliba more than the other way around. Did it look like that to you?
No, I guess I look at this and I feel like it's just one of those rotten luck situations where both players are going for the ball and there's a clash of heads. Like there's certainly nothing malicious about what Saliba's trying to do. He's trying to head the ball. Right. And Pedro's trying to head the ball, and it's just they both get a piece of it, and then they get Saliba ends up going into Pedro. Yeah, it's a tough one for me, and it's a tough one for the game, I think, because there's a couple layers to it. One is that it's an open question whether or not Joao Pedro should have even been playing in this game.
Oh, what do you mean?
Well, so in their previous game, and someone showed me I'd heard about it, and then someone showed me the replay, the video of it. In their previous game, Pedro was running with somebody in Brighton's previous match, and clearly as they're running down the field, looks back, clear there's a player there, and then very deliberately swings his elbow back towards the guy's head. Now he whiffs on it, completely missed. Okay, but the VAR looked at it and they gave nothing for it. And the post-match commentary was basically pretty much, all the panelists, the former referees and commentators, everyone looked at it and goes, oh, yeah, that's an obvious red. How was that not given? But the only person who didn't think it was a red was the referee. And so theoretically, Pedro should have been suspended for this game, but he wasn't.
So that's interesting to me. The attempt is worthy of a red card, even though he didn't connect.
Oh, yeah, for that kind of... if it's being judged as deliberate violent action, in that case, theoretically, you shouldn't get away with it just because you missed. I mean, sometimes it's hard to judge intent. He looks back, cocks his arm, and swings it. It's completely out of whack with his running motion. It's painfully obvious that that's exactly what he was trying to do. Yeah, so again, everything about that just screams unfortunate. We've sort of talked about this. People are loath to ascribe luck to sporting events because we want it to be about skill and talent and willpower and all that. But yeah, we've been fantastically unlucky so far this season. And it's just, that's how it goes sometimes. And we can be frustrated by it. But like I said, in a lot of ways, away to Brighton is more a point earned rather than 2 points lost. And I think you have to sort of think about it that way. And I know everybody's freaking out about the title race, and we're so far behind Liverpool and all that. And here they are dropping points to Manchester United, who is kind of garbage. This is how it goes. Manchester City, and even us, in the first part of the year, have kind of ruined people's understanding of this. Because, you watch teams just rattle off win. That's not how it works. Like, what makes that so incredible is that doesn't happen. And so, I think it's in a lot of ways, there's a certain amount of treading water we're going to be doing in this part of the season. And I think if we can once we get ourselves, back into this, this season is not over. Like this, the title race is far from over. There are a lot more twists and turns to come. Saw Chelsea drop points again this weekend. I think we were just kind of fantastically unlucky here in this instance. And I'm annoyed by it, but again, as I said, we're not going to complain about the refereeing, but I'm not really going to complain about this call.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just, like you said, it is unfortunate, especially because the way the match had been going, I really think absent that penalty, I don't think they score another goal. I mean, they've just they've just been sloppy in all their attempts. Every time that they had the ball, they did something to mess it up, either just, totally off target shot or whatever it is. And who knows, maybe a lot of it was the conditions on the pitch, but they were not doing well against us offensively.
Yeah, I mean, again, reiterate some things we talked about before, like the field, with the weather conditions weren't great. Mm-hmm. I know we're tired. We only had the 2 days off, and they had 4 days. I mean, they're still tired because they're still running through the holiday, the festive fixture stretch as well. So there's that. I think also we're really good defensively. Like, we really are. And we kind of, it's so easy to fixate on the things that go wrong, all the goals we concede, but then you realize, like, how we think we are still statistically the best defense in the league. So, like, we should feel good about that.
Yeah, definitely.
But it is frustrating. And then after that, I mean, they had a few moments. They were dangerous. We had a couple of moments where we threw the balls in the box, and Party was underneath a header. Calafiori missed one, but actually would have been offside anyway.
That's one thing that's frustrated me. This match, probably Brentford, and definitely the match before, Jesus has been frustrating me with making offside runs. Like, over and over again, he sometimes ends up getting the ball in the goal and sometimes he doesn't, but he's very often offside. Like, he needs to work on that more. He's clearly not paying close enough attention to it because it's been happening multiple times. It's been noticeable.
Yeah, and that's tough because we've talked about the defensive line that so many of our opponents are playing, and Brighton's really good and is going to do it like we talked about with Fulham and a few other those better teams are going to be more disciplined in holding their defensive lines, and so those are the ones you're going to get caught out with. I know Jesus had that early opportunity, and obviously it was frustrating that they had the save, but then it didn't matter because he was offside. Although I don't remember if he was offside on that one. Anyway, but the point is, that's just the kind of thing we have to continue to work through to put ourselves in better positions and get and get the opportunities and get the goals.
So one thing that was kind of funny, did you get a Groundhog Day vibe at any point with these fouls they kept on committing on us, like just outside the 18-yard box, where we took like the same free kick at least 3 times?
Yeah, I mean that's the set piece they're running on those, right? Where everyone steps forward, runs into the line, steps back in, steps forward. I mean and I think what they're doing is part of what they're trying to do is move into different spaces each time. And so that you as the defender don't necessarily know who you're supposed to be tracking. And I think that's what a lot of that movement is meant to do. And we got some really good delivery. Declan Rice had that one ball really cheeky, rolled it low along the ground, which, ooh, that would have been curved. Something.
That was so close. Yeah, that was something.
Yeah, and we had a few of those opportunities that, we had a few of those opportunities, and like we talk about, Parties gets underneath a header and takes it and puts it high on a good ball. Yeah, there were some that we were close, and it's just not close enough, unfortunately.
So yeah, I overall, I guess the last thing to really cover is we had a lot of stoppage time given at the end, and I was really, really hoping we'd pull it out in stoppage time. We had a few good chances, and a few of them were just blown by Party one way or another. Like, am I blowing that out of proportion, or was he more to blame than other players for not doing anything with those?
I'm not really going to at that point, because I think there's two things going on there. One, I think he was suffering from the same problems everyone else was. He's tired, maybe a little sick, the bad field, all of the above. I think also Party's going to maybe catches some of that from you just because he's the guy on the ball. Mm-hmm. And you'd like to see a little bit better there, but I honestly don't know who, watching that game, I don't know who would have been better with it. I mean, even Odegaard had some dicey moments with the ball. I just think it's a case where, obviously you're hoping they pull it out, but I just the way I'm watching, just as I'm watching them, they looked exhausted. They just looked like they were running in mud. They didn't have it, and I think to ding Party is just, in this instance, is sort of scapegoating him for everybody's kind of weakness at the end of the game.
And, actually, like, as I think about it, we didn't make almost any substitutions aside from the halftime sub. And then Odegaard came on for Jorginho, which, by the way, we didn't talk about Brighton's halftime sub where they brought on their Jorginho, spelled more the Italian way, I guess, whereas our Jorginho, though being Italian, spells it the Brazilian way.
Yeah, I would say he's an Italian national, as I understand. Yeah. Born in Brazil, but I think grew up in Italy, I think. Anyway, yes, he plays.
Something, yeah.
Yes, he's won the Euros with Italy, so.
Right. Yeah, but so it's anyway. So we brought on Odegaard in the 64th minute, but pretty much didn't make any other subs, which is probably like what you were talking about with Odegaard coming on late, where it's just managing the fixture congestion at this point, where he didn't really want to bring anybody else on. I don't know why, because if they're that tired, this seems like a game where it could have made a big difference bringing on players in the second half to kind of rejuvenate us a little bit, right?
Yeah, although I think part of the problem is at that stage of the game, what you want is an attacking player. And we didn't have any. I think the real reason you didn't see a lot of subs is because there's not a lot of guys on that bench that you would want to bring in given the circumstances. Hold on, let me pull up our bench. Because I remember looking at it and thinking, man, there were like two names on there that are clearly youth players, so they're not playing. Yeah. Where is it? Scores. And I'm just trying to pull up the lineup so I can see who was... There we go. Just trying to pull up a lineup so I can see who is on the bench. Youth player. You have Kivior, who's a defensive player, not bringing Lewis Skelly, who's really a replacement for Calafiori, who is, I think, better at this point in his career, better going forward. Mm-hmm. You have Zinchenko, who is basically an older version of Calafiori, Kieran Tierney, and then Neto, the backup keeper. Otherwise, you've got Martinelli and Odegaard, who came off the bench. I don't want to put any of those other guys unless maybe you get weird and say, put Zinchenko in the midfield. Let's go crazy. But I don't think that would have. as much as I respect Zinchenko's ability to go forward and provide offensive opportunities, I don't think that would have really done anything for us. Same with Lewis Skelly, and I think there as well. I think also if you're Arteta, you're also kind of in that point of let's hold on to the point rather than push too far forward and wind up getting nothing. Giving up the goal and getting nothing.
Who was your player of the week for this week?
It's going to seem weird because I didn't actually see much of the Brentford game, but based on some of the other commentary, plus I think I'm going to throw in the other games from the festive period, like Ipswich and stuff. I'm going to say Thomas Partey. I thought he had a solid performance for us. I thought he's arguably been the best player during the festive period. He's played a lot of minutes, which is not something we really expected out of him. Come the start of the season. And, he's been very versatile, too. I don't like Thomas Partey at right back. No, I don't think anybody likes Thomas Partey at right back except Arteta for some reason. But I thought his performance there was fine. Like we talked about, I think he wasn't really the problem in that late stage. I think everybody kind of collectively was the problem. So I thought Partey had a pretty solid performance, and I heard a lot of good things about his performance in the Brentford game. So I'm going to say Thomas Partey with a shout out for the first hour. I really liked William Saliba. And then he goes and headbutts Joao Pedro, who maybe deserves it, but still can't be doing that, I guess.
It's kind of funny you mentioned that because after he headed into him, I noticed a bandage on the side of Joao Pedro's head. I was like, oh, wow, he must have really gotten him. And then I started noticing in the replays of their head collision, like, no, that was already there. So somebody else had already hit him in the head, apparently.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Go figure. No, good shout with Partey. And he did go 90 for both matches. So he put in the time. And overall, definitely from Brentford, I could see that totally. I am going to go with Ethan Nwaneri. I think I liked what I saw from him a lot. I think the biggest problem I might have in picking him is that he was subbed off at the half in the second match, but he scored our only goal before that. So, there's that counterbalancing it. But no, especially in the Brentford match, I loved what I saw from him. He just looked like he was doing all the things you'd want him to be doing at his age in that match. Just really a force that they had to reckon with and didn't successfully. So.
And I do think that's definitely a difference between us having only seen the Brighton game. As I mentioned, I had some criticisms of some of the things he did in the Brighton game. Again, he scored the goal. It's awesome. And it really, really sucks that he's hurt. But, to hit the way he and Lewis Skelly are being integrated into the lineup is very exciting to see.
Yeah, definitely. I'm loving seeing that develop. I feel like I'm getting in, Saka was already pretty established by the time I started following Arsenal. It feels like I'm kind of on this journey. I saw when he played his first match when they substituted him in as a 15-year-old with 3 minutes to go in the match or whatever. And I'm seeing his journey, and that's really fun for me. Well, what is coming up next week?
2 games this week, cup games. I said we're playing all 4 competitions this month on Tuesday. So lovely, tight turnaround. We're back home at least against Newcastle in the first leg of the Carabao Cup semifinals. Remember, this is a 2-leg round, so there will be this game. And then in the first week of February, we'll play the second leg up at St. James's Park. But for now, this would be a good opportunity. I mean, ideally, Newcastle, who's been playing well lately, but who has struggled in their trips to the Emirates. Ideally, we'll smash them and then make the second leg an academic exercise. But we can't have nice things this season, I guess. So, but hopefully it goes well. And that game will be on Paramount Plus. And then on Sunday, we're the marquee fixture for the third round of the FA Cup because we are home to Manchester United, which, all jokes about Manchester United's form and their position in the table, and the Athletics running articles saying, what would happen if Manchester United was relegated? They're not getting relegated. It is still have a bit of a glamour to this one. So that'll be a fun one. That'll be Sunday on ESPN Plus, third round of the FA Cup.
All right. Thanks for joining us at Gooner U. If you're watching on YouTube, you can also listen to our show on Apple, Spotify, and some other places. If you're only listening, try watching us on YouTube with a link in the show notes. Your homework for today is to write a review or leave us a comment on your platform of choice. We record the show using Zencaster. If you'd like to try it out, you can support Gooner U by signing up using the link in the description, which also has links to everything we talked about and our social pages. Again, my name is Dove, and you can find me on Twitter at Dove Frankel. With me, as always, is Keith, and you can find him in a pub watching Arsenal matches.
So come on, you Gunners.